The sky was filled with fire. Alien ships, dark and monstrous, hovered above the earth, casting long shadows across cities below. The world had no warning. One moment, humans were living their daily lives, and the next, everything was torn apart. No one knew where the attack had come from. There were no signals, no alerts. One minute, Earth was peaceful, and the next, it was under siege. In cities around the world, people looked up in horror as massive ships descended from the sky. They were nothing like anything humans had ever seen. The ships were sleek, with sharp edges, and they emitted a low humming sound. Huge cannons on the ships fired deadly energy beams, destroying buildings, setting forests on fire, and tearing apart entire military bases. The air was filled with screams and chaos. It felt like the end of the world. At first, humanity tried to fight back. The military launched their best weapons, but it was useless. The alien ships were too fast, too strong. Their weapons blasted through tanks, fighter jets, and even the strongest missile defense systems. There was nothing humanity could do. The aliens' technology was far beyond anything Earth had. In a matter of hours, entire countries were destroyed. Major cities like New York, London, and Tokyo were hit hardest. Buildings crumbled to the ground, and the streets were filled with dust and smoke. The noise of the explosions drowned out everything else. People ran in every direction, not knowing where to go or what to do. Fear gripped every heart. In the panic, some tried to escape. Planes were packed with people trying to flee, but they never made it far. The alien ships targeted the skies, shooting down every plane in their path. The world had never seen destruction like this before. Governments scrambled to respond. Leaders from around the world met, trying to figure out a plan. But it was too late. There was no chance of stopping the invaders. The aliens had come prepared. Their ships were in the air, their weapons were unmatched, and their numbers seemed endless. On the ground, humans did everything they could to resist. Soldiers fought back, but their bullets and bombs were like toys to the aliens. Nothing could touch them. The aliens moved in, taking over military bases and key strongholds. In just a few hours, all the major defense points had fallen. As the night fell, the world seemed to be swallowed by darkness. Alien ships hovered like vultures, watching over the ruins below. It was clear now. Humanity was losing. Everywhere, people were running, hiding, or trying to fight back. But no one could stop the invaders. The cities were silent except for the sounds of distant explosions. In the midst of all this chaos, one thing became clear. The aliens weren't here just to conquer. They were here to destroy. They wiped out everything in their path, leaving nothing behind. It wasn't just about taking Earth. It was about showing the universe how easily they could crush a world. The human resistance was small and scattered. A few brave souls tried to organize, but it was hopeless. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched. The alien forces only grew stronger as the hours passed, and the hope of victory seemed to slip further away with every passing minute. People tried to keep their spirits up, but deep down, they knew the truth. Earth was losing. The aliens were winning. There was no time to mourn the cities lost, the families torn apart, or the millions already dead. The fight for Earth had just begun, and the humans were quickly realizing how hopeless it all seemed. But then, something strange began to happen. As the days passed, and the alien forces seemed unstoppable, something stirred in the heart of humanity. In small corners of the world, in hidden caves and underground bunkers, humans refused to give up. Despite everything, despite the overwhelming force of the aliens, they weren't ready to surrender. They weren't done yet. But no one could have known just how much fight was left in them. The world seemed lost. Alien ships still filled the sky, casting their shadows over the ruined cities. The first few days of the invasion had been brutal. Entire cities lay in rubble, and many of Earth's greatest cities were nothing more than smoldering remains. But in the midst of all the destruction, a small spark of hope was beginning to grow. Some humans refused to give up. It started in the forests, deep in the mountains, and in the quiet corners of the world. People who had survived the first wave of attacks banded together. They didn't have the fancy weapons or advanced technology of the aliens, but they had something else, a fierce will to survive. They knew their land, their homes, and their enemies. The aliens didn't understand Earth's terrain or the strength of its people. A group of survivors in a small town in the mountains set up their camp. They were just ordinary people, but they were determined to fight. They had old weapons, guns, knives, and tools from before the war. But they used them with a cleverness that made up for their lack of advanced tech. They knew how to hide, how to move quickly, and how to strike when the aliens weren't looking. The first time they attacked, it was a simple raid on an alien supply convoy. The humans used the terrain to their advantage, ambushing the aliens in the thick woods. The invaders were caught by surprise. They had never expected humans to fight back in this way. The battle was over quickly, with the humans taking a few weapons and supplies. But it was a huge victory. It was the first real blow the aliens had taken since they arrived. The news of this victory spread fast. It didn't matter that it was small. What mattered was that humans had struck back. Word spread to other survivors hiding in different parts of the world. Soon, more groups of humans began to fight back in their own ways. They ambushed alien patrols, set traps, and sabotaged enemy technology. They used the world they knew, the land that the aliens didn't understand, to strike fear into the invaders. It wasn't just small groups either. Even the remnants of Earth's armies began to regroup. Soldiers who had been scattered during the initial attacks came together in hidden bases. They were hurt and tired, but they were not broken. They didn't have the fancy alien ships, but they had their will, and that was enough. One of the first major victories came when a group of human soldiers, working together with the local resistance, managed to take down a single alien warship. It wasn't easy. It took weeks of planning, preparing, and waiting. But when the moment came, they attacked with everything they had. They used explosives, old missiles, and any weapon they could find. In the end, they destroyed the ship. It fell from the sky in a blazing fireball, crashing into the ground. The sound of that explosion was heard for miles. It was a symbol of hope. The humans had done it. They had beaten the aliens at their own game. The invaders were not as invincible as they had thought. In small battles all over the world, humans continued to fight. Every victory, no matter how small, gave them more strength. Every alien ship that fell, every alien soldier that was captured or killed, was proof that the humans were not finished. Meanwhile, the alien forces began to feel something they hadn't felt since they landed on Earth: doubt. The initial wave of attacks had been quick and overwhelming. But now, the aliens were starting to lose ground. Their high-tech weapons and advanced ships were no longer enough. They hadn't counted on the human ability to adapt, to use what they had and make the most of it. The aliens had underestimated Earth's people, and now they were paying the price. The alien commanders began to grow worried. They couldn't understand how these primitive humans could fight back with such determination. Earth had seemed like an easy target, but now it was clear this wasn't going to be as easy as they had thought. In one of the alien command centers, the lead commander stared at the map of Earth. It was filled with red markers showing the locations of human resistance, but there were more green markers now too. The green markers were where humans had taken back control. The commander clenched his fist in frustration. He had never expected this, but humans were just getting started. The fight wasn't over. Far from it. The aliens had made the mistake of underestimating humanity. They thought they could just land and win, but they were wrong. Humans had something the aliens didn't understand. They fought for their homes, their families, and their future, and that was a force the aliens couldn't control. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about survival, and Earth's survivors weren't ready to give up. They were ready to take their planet back. The alien commander, Vrax stood in the center of the control room, his sharp eyes scanning the holographic map of Earth. The red marks showed the areas where the alien forces had attacked. The green marks, however, were a problem. They marked the locations where the humans had started to fight back. Small victories for Earth, but victories nonetheless. Vrax couldn't understand it. He had expected Earth's resistance to be crushed quickly. But humans, with all their weaknesses, were proving harder to defeat than he had thought. Why haven't we finished them yet? Vrax growled, his voice cold and filled with anger. His subordinates didn't dare respond, knowing it was better to stay silent than to make a mistake in front of their commander. He tapped a control on the table, and a hologram of Earth's shattered surface appeared before him. The once thriving cities were now in ruins, but the human forces were still fighting back. Resistance cells were scattered across the globe, and despite their small numbers, they were showing an unexpected amount of strength. Vrax clenched his fists. He had already sent waves of ships, thousands of his best warriors, and had watched cities burn under his command. Yet these humans were still standing. They fought like cornered animals, and it was beginning to annoy him. "It's time to end this," Vrax said finally. He turned to his second-in-command, a tall alien named Kes, who stood silently by his side. "We will stop these human pests once and for all. Prepare the final strike." Kes nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The alien commander had grown impatient. The time for subtlety was over. They had already destroyed major cities and wiped out Earth's defenses, but the humans' will to survive was their greatest strength. It wasn't something they could just crush with more bombs or energy beams. They needed a different approach. "We'll need more than just firepower," Vrax continued, his voice now cold with certainty. "We need to break their spirit. We need to show them that they cannot win, no matter how much they resist." Kes agreed. He knew that the time for terror was now. If they could shake the humans' hope, they would collapse. "What do you suggest, Commander?" Vrax paused for a moment before speaking. "We will target their remaining strongholds. We will take them down one by one, but we will do it differently this time. We will leave them with nothing. We will take their symbols of hope, their leaders, and their homes. We will make them feel that they are fighting a battle they cannot win." Kes raised an eyebrow. "You mean to strike at the heart of their resistance?" Vrax nodded. "Exactly. If we target their leaders, the ones who inspire them to keep fighting, the humans will fall into disarray. Without leadership, their resistance will crumble. I want their capitals, their command centers, and their last hope wiped from existence, and we'll do it in one swift blow." He turned his gaze to the view of Earth outside the ship's windows, looking down at the planet below. He had thought that taking over Earth would be easy, but now the humans had shown a side of themselves he had not expected. They were relentless, stubborn, and would not back down. But all that would change once he put his plan into motion. Within hours, the alien fleet began to mobilize. Vrax called for a massive attack, one that would crush the last pockets of human resistance. He ordered his ships to target the strongest human strongholds, especially the underground bases where the survivors had been hiding. These were the last places where the humans could regroup and plan their next moves. If he could destroy these places, the humans would have nowhere left to run. "We'll start with the most important targets," Vrax said. "We'll destroy the last human capitals. We'll take their leaders alive, if possible, and break them. Once their leaders fall, the humans will have no one to guide them. They'll lose hope and scatter like frightened animals." Kes agreed with the plan, but he could see the commander's impatience growing. He understood the pressure Vrax felt. The commander had taken Earth for granted. He thought it would be a quick victory, and now, every moment that passed made him feel more desperate. But Kes knew this would be their final push. One final attack to destroy everything the humans had left. As the alien fleet moved into position, Vrax watched as thousands of ships lined up in the darkness of space, ready to rain destruction down on Earth. He didn't care about the cost. The aliens had the power, and the humans would soon realize that their fight was pointless. "We will finish this," Vrax said coldly. "No more delays. No more mistakes. This is the end for Earth." And so, the final phase of the invasion began. The aliens were prepared to bring the full force of their fleet down on Earth, targeting the heart of human resistance. Vrax believed that this time, it would be different. This time, the humans would finally be broken. The skies above Earth were darker than ever. The alien fleet, vast and powerful, hovered over the planet, ready to deliver the final blow. Cities were gone, military bases were destroyed, and most of humanity had scattered into small, hidden groups. The aliens had made it clear that there was no place left for humans to run. It felt like the end. But in the midst of all this, something unexpected was about to happen. In a small underground base, deep in the mountains, a human named Jason stood in front of a group of survivors. He was just an ordinary man. No military training, no special powers. Just a man who had watched everything he loved fall apart. His clothes were torn, his face was bruised, but his eyes burned with a fire that no one could ignore. Jason had lost everything. His family, his friends, his home. But he had never given up. He had seen the aliens take everything from him, yet he still refused to surrender. And now, standing in front of these survivors, he had made a decision. He couldn't let the aliens destroy what was left of humanity. It was time for a change. "We can still fight," Jason said, his voice strong and steady. "It may seem like we're out of options, but we're not done yet. The aliens think they've won, but they're wrong." The survivors in the room looked at him with uncertain eyes. Most of them had lost hope. Some of them were even starting to believe that the end was inevitable. They had seen too many friends and family fall, too many battles lost. But Jason's words were like a spark in the darkness. "They've taken everything from us," Jason continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "But they haven't taken our will to fight. They haven't taken our spirit. And as long as we have that, we can still win." Jason's speech wasn't just about hope, it was about truth. The aliens may have destroyed cities and wiped out military bases, but they hadn't destroyed the heart of humanity. And that heart was still beating. One by one, the survivors in the room began to nod. They didn't have much, but they had each other. They had the strength to keep going, and Jason had reminded them of that. In the face of impossible odds, humans had always found a way to fight back. As Jason spoke, something changed. The survivors in the room weren't just listening. They were starting to believe. There was a fire in their hearts that hadn't been there before. They knew they couldn't defeat the aliens with sheer power alone, but they could still fight in ways the invaders wouldn't expect. "We have one advantage that they don't," Jason said, his voice filled with determination. "We know our world. We know every corner, every cave, every hidden place. The aliens can't control everything here, and that's something they'll never understand." He paused, letting his words sink in. The aliens, with their advanced technology and weapons, had underestimated humans from the very beginning. They thought they could easily take over the planet, but they hadn't counted on the strength of human will. "We will hit them where they least expected," Jason said, a plan forming in his mind. "We'll fight from the shadows. We'll make them feel every loss, and we'll remind them of something they've forgotten. Humans don't give up." Outside the base, the sound of distant explosions echoed across the mountains. The aliens were coming closer, preparing for their final assault. But Jason didn't flinch. He had seen the destruction, felt the fear, and watched as everything seemed to fall apart. But now he felt something else. Hope. As the days passed, Jason and the survivors worked together. They scouted, planned, and prepared. They were small in number, but they were determined. They knew the alien forces were coming for them, but they weren't going to make it easy. Every step they took was a step toward pushing back the invaders, even if it was just a small victory. Jason led his group to the heart of an alien supply base, hidden deep in a mountain. It was risky, but they were running out of time. The aliens were relentless, and soon they would begin their final strike. But Jason refused to let that happen without a fight. With a careful plan and a lot of courage, they managed to sneak into the base under the cover of night. They set traps, sabotaged equipment, and struck at the aliens in ways they hadn't expected. The aliens, confident in their victory, were caught off guard. They hadn't prepared for humans to fight back like this. The battle wasn't easy, but the humans were quick and clever. They fought with everything they had, and by the end of the night, they had taken down a key alien supply line. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless, and it was the beginning of something bigger. Jason's voice rang out once more, this time to the survivors who had fought beside him. This is just the start. We may be small, but we have something they'll never understand. We have hope, we have unity, and we have each other. We can't lose. For the first time in a long time, the survivors stood taller. They had seen what one man could do with nothing but willpower. And now, they believed. The aliens might have power, but they didn't have the heart of humanity. And that was something they would never be able to break. As the alien forces prepared to make their final strike against Earth, the last thing they expected was for humans to have a secret weapon, a weapon they didn't even know existed. Hidden in the deep, cold waters of the Arctic, a fleet of human ships had been waiting, quietly and patiently, for the moment to strike. These ships were not the advanced, shiny vessels the aliens had seen in Earth's major cities. They weren't powered by alien technology or designed for large-scale warfare. They were simple, old ships, built before the invasion, when Earth was at peace, but they were still functional, and they still held the power to turn the tide of the war. Jason and the other survivors had no idea about the fleet. They were still focused on guerrilla warfare, fighting in small pockets across the globe. But there were others, a small group of elite soldiers and engineers, who had managed to escape the initial invasion. They had found the fleet hidden in the Arctic and had been quietly working to bring it back to life. The fleet was small, only a handful of ships, but it was enough. Enough to make a difference. Enough to send a message to the alien forces that Earth wasn't going down without a fight. The fleet was hidden, undetected by the alien forces, deep under the icy waters. Only a few humans knew about its existence, and they had kept it that way. They had waited for the right moment. Now, with Earth on the brink of destruction, the time had come. Admiral Sarah Graves, a woman who had been in command of the fleet before the invasion, stood at the front of the lead ship, the Victory. She looked out over the frozen ocean, her face determined and calm. Her crew, made up of soldiers, engineers, and scientists, were ready. They had trained for this moment for years, preparing the fleet in silence, knowing that one day they might be needed. That day had finally arrived. "We're ready," Admiral Graves said to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Thomas. "All systems are operational. The fleet is waiting for our signal." Lieutenant Thomas nodded. "The aliens don't know we're here. We have the element of surprise. This could be our only chance." Graves looked out at the icy horizon, where the stars shone bright against the darkness of space. "Let's make it count." Meanwhile, on the alien command ship, Commander Vrax stood once again in front of his war council. His frustration had reached its peak. The humans were still fighting, still resisting. The attacks were getting more unpredictable, and the resistance had started to organize better. Vrax was certain the final push would crush them, but deep down, something didn't sit right. He had no idea how the humans were still holding on, but it made him uneasy. "Prepare for the final assault," Vrax ordered, his voice cold and sharp. "This will be the end. No more delays." As the alien ships began to move into position, Vrax's fleet started to encircle Earth. It was the beginning of the final destruction. But little did he know, Earth still had a hidden card to play. Admiral Graves sent the signal. A single, quiet command was all it took, and within moments, the fleet of hidden ships rose from beneath the ice. The human fleet, long thought forgotten by Earth's enemies, emerged into the dark ocean above. The ships were not large, but they were fast and stealthy, designed to move quickly and avoid detection. The Victory, along with the other ships, cut through the cold waters, their engines humming silently. As they broke the surface, the ships slowly rose above the waves, their hulls reflecting the moonlight. The fleet was a mix of old warships and newer, smaller vessels, each carrying weapons that had been salvaged and repaired over time. They weren't as advanced as the alien ships, but they had something just as valuable: surprise. The fleet moved quickly, disappearing into the night sky as they flew into space. They had one goal: to strike the heart of the alien invasion fleet before it could launch its final attack on Earth. The alien commanders would never see them coming. Back in the underground base, Jason and the other survivors had no idea what was happening above. They were still fighting, still hoping that their guerrilla tactics could make a difference. But Jason had a feeling. He had seen too much, lost too much, to believe that Earth was done. Somewhere, somehow, something was happening. He could feel it. Suddenly, a message crackled through the radio. It was brief, but clear. The fleet is in position. The countdown begins now. Jason's heart skipped a beat. The fleet? What fleet? Who had sent this message? On the alien command ship, Vrax's eyes widened as his sensors picked up something unexpected. A fleet of human ships, small but fast, was approaching his invasion fleet. They had come out of nowhere. The aliens hadn't detected them before, but now they were closing in fast. Vrax was caught off guard. He growled in anger. How did they find us? His officers scrambled to respond. But it was too late. The humans were already in range. With a powerful burst, the first of the human ships fired, sending a barrage of missiles toward the alien fleet. The aliens fired back, but the human ships were too quick, too unpredictable. The battle was on. As the first wave of alien ships exploded in a flash of light, Jason and the survivors on Earth could only watch in stunned silence. The tide was turning. Commander Vrax stood on the bridge of his flagship, his cold, reptilian eyes fixed on the holographic battle map in front of him. Bright red dots, representing his mighty alien fleet, flickered across the screen. The green dots, representing human resistance forces, had been barely noticeable until now. But suddenly, those green dots had multiplied, and they were moving in ways his fleet couldn't predict. His claws clenched the edge of the console as another explosion lit up the screen. Another one of his ships, a destroyer-class vessel, had been taken out. How? How could primitive humans, with their outdated weapons and clumsy technology, be winning? This is impossible. Vrax growled, slamming his fist against the console. Their ships are ancient. Their resources are limited. They shouldn't stand a chance. His second-in-command, Officer Lirak, hesitated before responding. Commander, the humans' tactics are unconventional. Their ships are smaller, faster. They're attacking in ways we didn't account for. Vrax narrowed his eyes, his frustration boiling over. You mean they're fighting like cowards? Hiding, striking, and retreating before we can counter. That's not strategy. That's desperation. But deep down, Vrax knew it wasn't desperation. He had underestimated these humans from the beginning. To him, they had seemed weak, disorganized, and inferior in every way. Yet now, they were pushing his fleet back, something no species had done in hundreds of years. Suddenly, a junior officer spoke up from the control station. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the surface of the planet. It appears to be. Spit it out, Vrax barked. The officer swallowed nervously. It appears to be coordinated signals guiding the human fleet. They've been communicating in a way we couldn't intercept. Their resistance wasn't scattered at all. They've been planning this. The realization hit Vrax like a shockwave. The humans had fooled him. They had made it seem like they were divided, broken, and helpless. But all along, They had been working together, building their strength, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. How did this happen? Vrax muttered to himself, pacing across the bridge. His pride, his overconfidence, had blinded him. He had ignored warning signs, dismissed the humans as unworthy opponents, and now he was paying the price. The sound of another explosion echoed through the ship as alarms blared. Vrax turned back to the holographic map, where another red dot blinked out of existence. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. Lyrak stepped forward cautiously. "Commander, if I may, perhaps it's time to retreat and regroup. We can't afford to lose more ships." Vrax spun around, his voice a sharp growl. "Retreat? Against humans? Never. I will not let my name be tarnished by defeat." "But Commander," Lyrak pressed, "this isn't just about pride. If we continue like this, we'll lose the entire fleet. The humans are using their terrain and knowledge of the planet to their advantage. They've turned Earth into a trap." Vrax hated to admit it, but Lyrak was right. The humans were fighting with a ferocity and ingenuity he hadn't expected. They were using the very thing he had mocked, Earth's environment, as a weapon. Every move his fleet made was met with a counterstrike. Every advance turned into a retreat. He turned back to the battle map, his mind racing. How could a species so primitive, so small, be this dangerous? Then he realized the truth. It wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their determination, their ability to adapt and survive, that made them dangerous. They refused to give up, no matter the odds. "They're not like any other species we've conquered," Vrax muttered. "They don't fear us. They thrive in chaos. They're unpredictable." Lyrak nodded. "That's what makes them dangerous, Commander. They don't fight by our rules." Vrax's claws tightened into fists. He had always believed in the superiority of his species, in their order and precision. But humans had shown him something he hadn't accounted for. Chaos could be just as powerful as control. As another alert flashed across the screen, Vrax made his decision. He turned to his crew, his voice cold and sharp. "Order the fleet to fall back. We will regroup outside the planet's orbit. This fight isn't over." The crew hurried to carry out his orders, relief evident on their faces. But Vrax wasn't relieved. He was furious. For the first time in his long career, he had been outmaneuvered. And it was by humans. Creatures he had fought were beneath him. As the alien fleet began to retreat, Vrax stared out the window of his flagship, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance. He could still see the flashes of battle in the atmosphere below, where the humans were fighting with everything they had. "This isn't over," Vrax muttered under his breath. "Humans may have won today, but they've made a mistake. They've shown me their strength and their weakness. Next time, I'll be ready." But deep down, a small part of him wondered if there would be a next time. The humans had already proven something he didn't want to admit. They were far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The battlefield above Earth was a chaotic storm of light and fire. Alien ships, sleek and massive, moved in formation, trying to regroup after their commander's order to retreat. But the human fleet wasn't giving them the chance. Admiral Sarah Graves, aboard the Victory, watched as the alien fleet began to pull back. Her crew erupted in cheers, but she raised her hand for silence. "It's not over yet," she said, her voice firm but calm. "We've forced them to retreat, but they're still a threat. Let's finish this." The human fleet moved as one, their smaller, faster ships darting around the aliens like hornets. Every ship had a role to play, from the heavily armed destroyers to the nimble fighters piloted by brave men and women. The aliens had underestimated humanity's willpower, and now they were paying the price. On the alien flagship, Commander Vrax was losing control of the situation. His crew scrambled to respond to the relentless human attacks. "Shields are failing on 3 more ships." One officer shouted, "We've lost contact with the southern flank." Another yelled. Vrax's claws gripped the armrest of his command chair. He had never faced such chaos. The humans were relentless, fighting with an intensity he hadn't thought possible. Each time his fleet tried to retreat, the humans blocked their path, forcing them back into the fight. How are they doing this? Vrax growled. They're outnumbered and outgunned. Lyrak, his second-in-command, stood beside him, her voice cautious. Commander, they're not fighting for victory. They're fighting for survival. That makes them unpredictable and dangerous. Vrax slammed his fist against the console. Enough. Order the fleet to regroup at the edge of the system. We'll fall back and... Before he could finish, an explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered, and sparks flew from the control panels. Vrax's eyes widened. What was that? A junior officer turned, his face pale. The humans have breached our outer defenses. Their lead ship is targeting us directly. Admiral Graves stood tall on the bridge of the Victory, her eyes locked on the alien flagship. Target their command ship, she ordered. If we take out their leader, the rest will crumble. Her crew worked quickly, coordinating the fleet's efforts. Missiles launched from the Victory and the surrounding ships, streaking through space toward the alien flagship. The alien defenses tried to intercept them, but the humans had timed their attack perfectly. The missiles struck their target, shaking the alien ship to its core. Inside the alien flagship, Vrax struggled to stay on his feet as alarms blared around him. Commander, Lyrak said urgently, the humans have us surrounded. We can't hold this position. For a moment, Vrax didn't respond. He stared at the battle map, watching as his once mighty fleet was torn apart by the humans. He had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but now he faced the unthinkable: defeat. Order the fleet to retreat, Vrax said finally, his voice bitter. Get us out of here. As the alien ships began to pull away, the human fleet pressed forward, chasing them to the edge of the solar system. But Admiral Graves held up her hand. Hold position, she commanded. Let them run. The crew looked at her in surprise. We're letting them go, Lieutenant Thomas asked. Graves nodded. For now. We've won the battle, but we don't have the resources to chase them across the galaxy. Besides, they've learned a lesson today. They'll think twice before coming back. The human fleet held its position, watching as the alien ships disappeared into the darkness of space. A cheer erupted across the bridge. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. Back on Earth, Jason and the other survivors emerged from their shelters. Looking up at the sky, the flashes of battle had stopped, and the alien ships were gone. For the first time in years, the skies were clear. They're retreating, Jason said, his voice filled with awe. We won. The people around him began to cheer, hugging one another and celebrating their hard-earned victory. But Jason's mind was already turning to the future. The aliens might have retreated, but the fight wasn't over. Humanity had proven its strength, but they would need to stay united to rebuild and defend their planet. In the days that followed, news of the victory spread across the world. Humans everywhere celebrated their triumph, but they also mourned the losses they had suffered. Entire cities had been destroyed, and countless lives had been lost. But amidst the grief, there was hope. Humanity had shown that they could stand together, even against impossible odds. Admiral Graves addressed the survivors in a broadcast that was shared around the world. We've faced the worst the galaxy could throw at us, she said, her voice steady and strong. And we've come out stronger. This victory isn't just for Earth, it's for humanity. Together, we will rebuild, and together, we will make sure this never happens again. Far away, in the darkness of space, Commander Vrax stood on the bridge of his battered flagship. He stared out the window, his pride shattered. The humans had defeated him, something no other species had done. He clenched his claws into fists, vowing silently that this wasn't the end. But deep down, he knew the truth. The humans were unlike any enemy he had ever faced. They were survivors, fighters, and innovators. And if he ever returned, he would need more than numbers and firepower to defeat them. For now, All Vrax could do was retreat. The humans had won. Earth was theirs.